I don't think I've ever felt this much pain in my life, and isolated to the point where I've had to seek advice on here. I truly never thought this would happen to me. My boyfriend, let's call him Kyle for simplicity, and I have had a really stable and loving relationship. And for context, I've lived most of my life in London, and I met him in London as well. He is American. He works in asset management and we're both fairly traditional, so I work mostly freelance. But I don't really make even a third of what he makes, which was fine as I plan on becoming a housewife and the primary caretaker. But this year he was offered a job in New York City where the pay is astronomically higher than he was making in London. And my whole life is in London, all of my family and friends. But I knew that this was going to open up doors for him and that we'd be able to buy a home in the future and etc. So, we moved right after Christmas to a really nice flat. Did not realize how expensive rent was here BTW. And because of COVID he works mostly remote, but sometimes he goes in and out of the office. He had his friends, so I realized that I also needed to at least try to befriend someone. But it was incredibly difficult, because when we moved there were still restrictions and I wasn't actively working. But when we met our landlord, I thought she was great. Quinn for simplicity. We were almost the same age, and even though we didn't have too much in common, she was incredibly welcoming that we even went to breakfast and lunch sometimes. Kyle was happy that I had befriended her. As the months went by, Quinn and I would have some drinks at my place or I'd go to hers, and one time I went with Kyle, and we got to know each other on a more personal level. She told me how dating felt so much harder at her age and that she'd always had fertility issues in her family, and was afraid that she was running out of time. And I sympathized with her because I had endometriosis, and I also had a similar fear. But in the last 2 months, I would only see her maybe once a week as she claimed she was spending a lot of time with her aunt, and so she was more busy than usual. I understood. 2 days ago, while Kyle was at work, I went to check the concierge for a package and I saw Quinn's aunt. I said hi and was polite and we spoke, because I had briefly met her before. I asked her how Quinn was doing since I hadn't seen her last weekend, and her aunt said that she was feeling a bit sick, but it was just morning sickness. I was confused, but I guess my face made her think that I was deeply concerned, and her aunt said that morning sickness is just expected in the first trimester. I was floored, not in an angry way. I was just caught off guard because I had no idea how or when she had become pregnant. In a way, I was kind of happy for her, but I also was slightly sad that she didn't tell me as I thought I was her friend. But I was excited for her, and I sent her a message congratulating her. When my BF came home that night, I revealed to him that she was pregnant and how happy I was for her, and the look on his face. I have never seen anything like that in my life. The color literally drained from his face the way you would picture it happening in a cartoon, and he was almost gaping. I was extremely confused, but he gained his composure and went to shower. I was making dinner, and my mind was racing. I couldn't really focus, but I couldn't pinpoint why. After he showered and I finished cooking, I decided to lay on the bed for a while, because I was feeling horrible. My BF then said he needed to get some really important bills from our mail, and he left quickly. At this point, I felt so horrible, so sick, because something felt ridiculously wrong. The entire atmosphere had shifted and I was completely unsettled. So I waited for him to leave and I followed him. It was all such a blur that I don't even remember walking to her floor. But I saw exactly what I instinctively thought I would. I hid behind the wall. At this point I was about to throw up and they were arguing, and I couldn't even hear what about, because at that point I showed myself before running back to our flat. Kyle came after me, asking me to wait, to hear him out, but I couldn't even breathe. I felt like I was going to vomit and choke at the same time. My throat was so constricted that I couldn't even talk, and he was rambling on about how it happened 2 months ago and it was a mistake. He never intended on hurting me, and he felt terrible. He said that it didn't mean anything, that Quinn literally meant nothing to him, and it was a one-time thing. And he didn't know she was pregnant and he was having a hard time processing that she was even pregnant in the first place. I told him to sleep on the couch, and I practically cried into my pillow all night. It's been 2 days since. I haven't left my bed and I can't eat. It feels like it will just come up and I haven't been able to speak to him since. He comes to the door and asks me to at least hear him out and give him a chance, and that we can work things out. Quinn sent me a message that I haven't read. I've given up my entire life and moved to a foreign country, and my name is on the lease. If I break it I can't afford to pay the rest off, and I think what's even worse is that I still love him. I hate him and love him at the same time. But I cannot believe he did this to me. Honestly, my life is over and I do not know if I will ever recover from this. This was incredibly long and I apologize for that, but I honestly do not know what to do next. Top 5 comments. 1. You can definitely leave. You can come back to the UK and leave the whole sorry mess behind you. and leave the ex-boyfriend and the landlady to play happy families together? Can you stay with friends or parents in the UK until you get yourself back on your feet? Forget the rest of the rent. Realistically, your landlord is going to have very little chance of pursuing you for the rent whilst you're living in the UK. Rent payments are a civil matter rather than criminal, so extradition treaties don't apply here. If you're living in the UK, your landlord would have to bring a case against you in a UK court, and it's highly unlikely that a judge would look favorably on her if she'd slept with your BF, and between them they'd effectively made your staying in that apartment untenable. It would likely be ruled that the contract had been frustrated by other events. Usual disclaimer applies: not a lawyer. If in doubt, consult a proper one, etc. If you are short of money and need to get back home, you may be able to get a temporary loan from the British consulate in NYC or from the embassy in Washington to cover your flights home. If in doubt, call the embassy. They normally have a specially trained member of staff to deal with situations like this, helping British nationals get home after abusive relationships, etc. Source: have worked in British embassies overseas. 2. I think your property manager will let you break lease under the circumstances. I'd contact whatever company the rent money goes to and explain in as much detail as you like. But say you have to break lease because of extenuating circumstances. It'll suck, but you're going to be fine once it's over. Reach out to whoever you can for any support you can muster. Make that jerk pay for a hotel till you leave. Just do whatever you can to take care of you and get out of there. 3. Just remember one thing: if you decide to stay, Quinn will be always third in your family because she is to be a mother to your boyfriend's child. Think carefully. Situation looks awful, but you will go out of it clean. Nothing to share with him, and after a while you will find someone better in London. You dodged big bullet. This could have happened when you have 2 kids and you stay home mom. You are lucky in this unlucky situation. 4. You get a flight back to London and you leave. If Quinn really is your landlord, I really can't see her coming after you for rent. She can take your ex as collateral. Your credit score in the US won't follow you, and by the sounds of it, your ex can afford the space on his own. Take good care of yourself. You don't deserve any of this. 5. I am going to suggest you call your parents and immediately start making preparations to move back home. The reason I say this is because at this point there is way too much potential long-term damage to ever really come back from this. Think about it. Even if you do decide to forgive him and make this relationship work, what happens if this baby is born? That is his child. That woman is also the mother of his child. He is going to have to parent the baby or pay child support, and those two will forever be in your lives. A child that isn't yours, a woman that destroyed your relationship constantly there. That is way too much emotional trauma. I know you probably want to ask him all the typical questions those of who have been cheated on ask. Why? How could you do this? Do you love him, her, etc.? But trust me, cheaters rarely tell the whole story, and 99% of the time, even when they do, it's going to be information that is difficult to hear and will probably do more damage. Take some time to heal, reflect on your life, and start to try and develop yourself independently. You are rightfully grieving, but right now take some time to let it all out, then start making the steps necessary to leave. You are young, you don't need to be looking towards a future or marriage with someone who has shown you who they really are.